Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon and watched the strange ship approach through the dark space near Jupiter. The alien vessel looked nothing like human ships, with its smooth curves and bright blue lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Jake had been exploring space for 15 years, but this was the first time he saw something that humans did not build. His hand stayed steady on the command console, even though his heart beat faster than normal. The communications. Officer Amy Rodriguez looked up from her station with wide eyes and said the alien ship was sending signals on multiple frequencies. Jake told her to open a channel and prepare the translation computers that Earth scientists had built for this exact moment. The main screen flickered and showed a face that looked almost human, but with larger eyes and pale blue skin. The creature had no hair, and its features were softer than any human Jake had ever seen. When it spoke, the translation system turned its words into English that sounded formal and careful. The alien introduced itself as Ambassador Keth Val from the Zalari Confederation and said it came in peace to welcome humanity to the greater galaxy. Jake felt a mix of excitement and worry as he realized that humans were not alone and that other intelligent life had been watching them for some time. Dr. Lisa Carter hurried to the bridge from her laboratory where she studied alien life forms that humans had only imagined until now. She carried her medical scanner and various testing devices that could analyze biological samples without harming the subjects. Lisa had dreamed of this moment since she was a child reading science books about life on other worlds. She asked Ambassador Keth Val if she could study Zalari biology to better understand their species, and the ambassador agreed with what seemed like amusement. The first scans showed results that surprised Lisa because the Zalari had much simpler biological systems than humans. Their bodies worked best in narrow temperature ranges, and they needed very specific types of food and air to survive. The ambassador explained that most species in the galaxy had evolved on stable worlds with little change over millions of years. Lisa realized that Earth had been much harsher than most planets, which forced humans to become more adaptable and stronger than typical galactic species. Ambassador Keth Val invited Jake and his crew to visit the Zalari homeworld where they could meet the Confederation Council and learn about the 12 species that made up their peaceful alliance. The ambassador described a galaxy where different species worked together through trade and cooperation rather than fighting wars or competing for resources. Jake agreed to the visit but privately wondered if such peace was really possible when his own species had spent thousands of years fighting each other over everything from territory to ideas. When they arrived at the Zalari homeworld, Jake saw cities that looked like they grew from the ground itself, with buildings that curved and twisted like living trees. The air smelled of flowers, and the temperature never changed from a comfortable warmth that made humans feel sleepy. Amy Rodriguez led a team of diplomats and scientists to meet with Confederation officials while Jake toured the planet with Ambassador Keth Val as their guide. The Zalari showed them museums full of art and science from 12 different species, who had all joined the Confederation peacefully over the past 1,000 years. Each species had been welcomed with the same integration process that included cultural exchange programs and gradual introduction to galactic technology and trade networks. Jake noticed that all the species seemed gentle and calm, with no obvious weapons or military forces visible anywhere on the planet. Dr. Carter spent days studying Zalari physiology and discovered that they were completely herbivorous and had never developed the fight-or-flight responses that humans considered normal. Their bodies could not handle stress well, and they became sick when faced with conflict or dangerous situations. She began to understand why the Confederation had developed such peaceful methods of solving problems when their biology made violence nearly impossible. Elder Vorth Min led the Confederation Council and welcomed humanity with ceremonies that had been used for centuries to integrate new species into their alliance. The Council assigned humans to the developing worlds category, which meant they would receive basic trade rights and access to certain technologies, but would need to prove themselves worthy of full membership over many years. Jake felt slightly insulted by this treatment, but kept his feelings hidden behind diplomatic smiles. Admiral Ben Parker received reports from the Horizon crew through quantum communication links that connected Earth to the ship across vast distances. He authorized the cultural exchange program and began preparing Earth for contact with galactic civilization. The news that humans were not alone spread across Earth within hours and changed everything people thought they knew about their place in the universe. As the days passed on the Zalari world, Jake began to notice that the Confederation species seemed to view humans as unusually aggressive and unpredictable compared to their normal standards. The Zalari took careful notes about human behavior and seemed both fascinated and worried by human responses to various situations. Jake realized that humans might be very different from other galactic species in ways that could become either advantages or problems depending on future circumstances. The USS Horizon arrived at the Tau Ceti system, where Krex warships had been attacking peaceful merchant vessels for 3 months. Jake Morrison studied the tactical displays that showed debris fields where once proud Zalari trading ships had been destroyed by weapons far more powerful than anything the Confederation possessed. The Krex Empire had built their civilization on conquest and war, while the Zalari had focused on art and science, which left them helpless against aggressive neighbors who took what they wanted by force. Lieutenant Commander Steve Walsh ran combat simulations on his tactical computer and found patterns in Krex attack methods that revealed important weaknesses. The Krex fought in rigid formations that maximized their firepower but left them vulnerable to unexpected maneuvers from smaller and faster ships. Steve had studied military history at the Naval Academy and recognized tactics that human armies had used centuries ago to defeat larger enemy forces through superior strategy and mobility. Admiral Zekthar commanded the Krex fleet from his massive battleship that bristled with weapons designed to destroy entire space stations with single shots. He looked at the approaching human vessel with contempt because it appeared small and weak compared to Krex warships that had conquered 17 star systems through superior technology and ruthless tactics. The Admiral sent a message demanding that the humans surrender immediately or face complete destruction like all the other species that had dared to oppose Krex expansion. Dr. Lisa Carter analyzed biological samples that the Zalari had collected from previous encounters with Krex warriors and discovered surprising information about their physical limitations. The Krex had been bred for short and decisive battles, where their superior strength and weapons could end fights quickly. Their metabolisms burned energy very fast, which meant they became exhausted during prolonged conflicts and needed long recovery periods between major engagements. Jake refused the Krex surrender demand and instead offered to negotiate a peaceful solution that would allow both species to use the trade routes without fighting. Admiral Zekthar laughed at this suggestion and ordered his ships to attack the lone human vessel that seemed foolish enough to challenge the mighty Krex Empire. The alien admiral expected the battle to end within minutes like all previous encounters. With Confederation forces, the Krex opened fire with plasma cannons that could melt through the strongest known armor in seconds, but Jake ordered evasive maneuvers that kept the Horizon moving in unpredictable patterns. Steve Walsh coordinated the ship's defensive systems while planning counterattacks that would exploit the weaknesses he had identified in Krex battle formations. The human crew worked together with efficiency that came from years of training and natural teamwork abilities. Amy Rodriguez managed communications and coordinated with other human ships that had arrived to support the Horizon during the confrontation. The small human fleet began executing complex maneuvers that confused the Krex commanders who expected their enemies to either flee immediately or die quickly. Instead, the humans engaged in hit-and-run tactics that gradually wore down Krex defenses while avoiding direct confrontations that would favor superior Krex firepower. The battle continued for 8 hours, which was longer than any previous engagement. In Krek's military history, Admiral Zekthar became increasingly frustrated as his supposedly superior forces failed to destroy the stubborn human ships that refused to fight according to established galactic warfare principles. The Krek's warriors began showing signs of exhaustion, while the human crews maintained their energy levels and tactical coordination throughout the extended conflict. Dr. Carter monitored Krek's biological readings during the battle and confirmed her theories about their physical limitations. The alien warriors were designed for quick victories, and their bodies began failing them during the prolonged engagement that humans seemed able to sustain indefinitely. She realized that human endurance came from evolutionary pressures on Earth, where survival often required long hunts and extended periods of stress and conflict. Steve Walsh finally identified the perfect moment to execute his carefully planned counterattack when Krek's formations became disorganized due to fatigue and confusion. The human ships coordinated a simultaneous strike against 3 different Krek's vessels using tactics that concentrated firepower while maintaining mobility. The aliens found themselves unable to respond effectively to attacks that came from multiple directions at once. Admiral Zekthar watched in shock as his fleet began taking serious damage for the first time in his military career. The humans fought with determination and tactical skill that seemed impossible for such a supposedly primitive species. When 2 of his battleships suffered critical system failures, the admiral realized that continuing the battle would result in complete destruction of his forces by an enemy he had underestimated. The Krek's fleet withdrew from the Tau Ceti system in disorder, while Admiral Zekthar sent emergency reports to Krek's high command, describing the humans as dangerous opponents who fought like possessed demons. He recommended avoiding further contact with humanity until the Empire could develop new strategies for dealing with their unusual combat methods and apparent immunity to psychological warfare that normally broke enemy morale. News of the human victory spread throughout both Confederation and Krek's territories within days through communication networks that connected thousands of star systems. The Zalari could hardly believe that someone had actually defeated the Kreks in open combat, since such a thing had never happened in recorded galactic history. Jake Morrison and his crew became heroes to species that had lived in fear of Krek's expansion for generations. The victory marked a turning point in galactic politics because it proved that the Krek's empire was not invincible and that aggressive expansion could be stopped by determined resistance. However, the battle also attracted attention from other dangerous forces in the galaxy, who began to view humanity as either a potential threat or a useful tool depending on their own goals and ambitions. Word of humanity's victory over the Krek's empire reached the attention of the Void Seekers, who had been the galaxy's most feared predators for over 10,000 years. Huntmaster Zil Neth received reports about the strange new species that had accomplished something no other civilization had ever managed and decided that these humans required immediate investigation. The Void Seekers had never encountered prey that could fight back effectively, and the concept troubled their ancient leader who had spent centuries hunting weaker species across the galaxy. Captain Amy Rodriguez now commanded a joint exploration fleet that included both human and Zalari vessels working together to investigate mysterious disappearances in the Outer Rim territories, where several colonies had vanished without any trace. The missing settlements showed no signs of battle or struggle, which puzzled investigators who expected to find evidence of raids or natural disasters. Instead, they discovered empty buildings with personal belongings left behind, as if the inhabitants had simply disappeared into thin air. Dr. Charlie Brooks joined the investigation team as an anthropologist who specialized in studying different galactic civilizations and their historical development patterns. He spent weeks analyzing data from the vanished colonies and began to notice connections to similar events that had occurred throughout galactic history. The disappearances followed a pattern that repeated every few centuries when entire species would suddenly stop communicating with their neighbors and fade from historical records. The Zalari spoke in whispers about ancient legends concerning the silent death that came from the void between stars to hunt civilizations that grew too large or too confident. Most galactic species dismissed these stories as primitive superstitions, but Charlie found enough historical evidence to suggest that something real had been systematically eliminating advanced civilizations for millennia. The pattern matched evolutionary cycles on Earth, where apex predators controlled population growth by hunting the most successful prey species. Amy's fleet discovered the ruins of a Confederation mining colony in the asteroid belt around a dying star, where millions of workers had been processing rare metals just weeks before the investigation began. The facilities remained intact and functional, but showed no signs of the people who had operated them until recently. Security recordings had been wiped clean, and communication logs ended abruptly without distress calls or emergency signals. The first contact with Void Seekers occurred when sensor operators detected massive ships approaching through hyperspace using stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to standard detection systems. The alien vessels appeared suddenly around Amy's fleet, like ghosts materializing from empty space. Their ships looked organic rather than mechanical, with surfaces that seemed to shift and change like living tissue in constant motion. Huntmaster Zil-Neth studied the human fleet through advanced sensors that could analyze biological signatures from vast distances and felt confusion about what he observed. The humans showed stress responses and elevated heart rates that indicated fear. But they did not flee or surrender as expected. Instead, they formed defensive formations and prepared for battle against odds that should have terrified any rational species into immediate submission. Dr. Lisa Carter monitored the crew's biological functions during the encounter and noticed that human stress responses actually improved their performance rather than degrading it like most other species. The fight-or-flight instincts that evolved on Earth allowed humans to function effectively under extreme pressure, while other galactic species became paralyzed by fear when faced with superior predators. The Void Seekers attacked using psychological warfare techniques that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years by projecting fear directly into their victims' minds through advanced neural manipulation technology. The alien weapons caused panic and despair in most species, which made them easy targets for capture or elimination. However, human crews responded to the mental attacks with anger and determination rather than surrender, which surprised the Void Seekers who had never encountered such resistance. Amy ordered her ships to scatter and use guerrilla tactics that made them harder targets, while her crews coordinated attacks against individual Void Seeker vessels. The humans employed unpredictable movement patterns and sudden direction changes that confused enemies who expected prey to follow logical escape routes. Instead, the human fleet began hunting the hunters, using team tactics that concentrated firepower against isolated targets. The battle moved through the asteroid fields where human ships used the rocky debris as cover while launching coordinated strikes against Void Seeker vessels that had never faced such aggressive resistance. Charlie Brooks realized that the humans were unconsciously using pack hunting strategies that evolved from their ancestors who hunted large prey animals across the African plains millions of years ago. Huntmaster Zil-Neth found himself fighting a defensive battle for the first time in his long career, as several of his ships took damage from human weapons that seemed primitive but proved surprisingly effective when used with tactical coordination. The humans fought with persistence that wore down Void Seeker forces accustomed to quick victories against terrified prey species. Dr. Carter analyzed captured Void Seeker technology and discovered that their weapons were designed to cause maximum psychological trauma rather than physical destruction because their hunting strategy relied on breaking enemy morale before capture. The aliens had never needed to develop defenses against determined resistance because no species had ever fought back with sustained aggression. The engagement lasted for days as human ships continued their guerrilla campaign against confused Void Seekers who could not understand why their prey refused to behave according to established patterns. Amy's fleet gradually gained the upper hand through superior teamwork and tactical flexibility that allowed them to adapt quickly to changing battle conditions. When the Void Seekers finally retreated, Huntmaster Zilneth reported to his pack leaders that the humans represented a completely new type of challenge that required different hunting strategies. For the first time in galactic history, a prey species had fought back successfully against the Silent Death and lived to tell other civilizations that the legendary predators could be defeated through courage and determination. The Zalari Confederation faced its greatest crisis in recorded history, as Void Seeker attacks intensified across dozens of star systems simultaneously in a coordinated campaign that seemed designed to test human response capabilities. Elder Vorth Min called an emergency council session where representatives from all 12 member species debated whether to request military assistance from the aggressive humans who had proven they could fight back against the galaxy's apex predators. Many council members worried that inviting human warriors into Confederation space might create new problems, even if it solved the immediate Void Seeker threat. Admiral Ben Parker established the Terran Defense Initiative after receiving desperate pleas for help from Zalari officials who had nowhere else to turn for protection against enemies. Their own peaceful nature prevented them from fighting effectively. Human military commanders began mobilizing fleets across known space while developing new tactical doctrines specifically designed to counter Void Seeker hunting strategies that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia without effective resistance. Colonel Jack Turner led the 1st Human Marine Battalion in ground operations against Void Seeker infiltration teams that had landed on several Confederation worlds to establish hunting bases for their expanding campaign. The alien infiltrators used advanced camouflage technology and psychological warfare techniques that made them nearly invisible to most galactic species, but human soldiers proved surprisingly effective at tracking enemies through environmental clues and behavioral pattern recognition. The Marines demonstrated superior adaptability in hostile environments by using guerrilla warfare tactics that evolved from military conflicts on Earth, where soldiers learned to survive and fight in extreme conditions for extended periods. Human troops could operate continuously for days without the metabolic crashes that limited other species, and their natural persistence hunting instincts made them excellent trackers who could follow enemy movements across vast distances. Dr. Charlie Brooks worked with Zalari scientists to decode Void Seeker communication patterns captured during recent battles and discovered fundamental weaknesses in their social structure that could be exploited through tactical coordination. The aliens had evolved as solitary hunters who worked in small groups, but lacked the complex social cooperation that allowed human military units to function as unified forces with shared objectives and mutual support systems. Captain Jake Morrison pioneered new fleet tactics based on wolfpack hunting strategies where multiple human ships coordinated their attacks to overwhelm individual Void Seeker vessels through sustained pressure and tactical flexibility. The USS Horizon became the flagship of humanity's most successful hunter-killer group that earned the nickname Earth's Wolves among Confederation species who watched in amazement as humans turned the tables on their former predators. The psychological impact of human resistance began affecting Void Seeker morale as Huntmaster Zilneth struggled to maintain discipline among pack members who had never experienced sustained combat against determined opponents. The aliens found their traditional hunting methods ineffective against prey that fought back with coordinated aggression and refused to surrender even when facing superior numbers and technology. Dr. Lisa Carter studied captured Void Seeker prisoners and learned that their physiology was optimized for short hunting expeditions rather than prolonged military campaigns, which explained why they had never developed defensive strategies against persistent attackers. The aliens became exhausted during extended conflicts, while humans seemed to gain strength from adversity through biological systems that evolved to handle chronic stress and resource scarcity. Colonel Turner's Marines perfected new urban warfare, techniques during the liberation of Kepler Station, where Void Seekers had established a major base for processing captured civilians from multiple species. The human soldiers used their superior endurance and tactical coordination to clear the facility room by room while protecting rescued prisoners who had been paralyzed by fear during their captivity under alien psychological control systems. The turning point came during the Battle of Kepler Station, when Huntmaster Sil-Neth led the largest Void Seeker assault in recorded galactic history, with over 50 hunting ships and thousands of experienced warriors who expected to overwhelm human resistance through sheer numerical superiority. The alien commander planned to demonstrate that humans were simply another prey species that could be defeated through conventional hunting tactics applied with sufficient force. Admiral Amy Rodriguez coordinated the human defense using a devastating pincer movement that trapped the Void Seeker fleet between 3 attack groups approaching from different directions simultaneously. The human ships executed complex maneuvers that required precise timing and communication while maintaining formation integrity under heavy enemy fire that would have scattered most galactic military forces. The Void Seekers found themselves fighting a defensive battle against enemies who seemed to anticipate their movements and counter their strategies before they could be fully implemented. Human tactical flexibility allowed rapid adaptation to changing battle conditions, while Void Seeker hunting instincts proved inadequate for large-scale military operations against coordinated resistance. Jake Morrison led the final assault that captured Huntmaster Sil-Neth alive, along with several other high-ranking Void Seeker commanders who had never imagined they could become prisoners of their former prey. The successful capture operation provided humans with access to advanced alien technology and detailed information about Void Seeker psychology that had remained secret throughout their 10,000-year reign of terror. News of the Void Seeker. Defeat spread across the galaxy faster than any previous information transmission, as species that had lived in constant fear for generations began to believe that liberation from ancient threats might actually be possible. The Zalari Confederation started viewing humans not as dangerous newcomers, but as potential saviors who possessed unique abilities that could protect peaceful civilizations from predators they could never fight themselves. The victory marked humanity's emergence as a major galactic power, but also attracted attention from even more dangerous enemies who had been watching developments in this region of space, with growing concern about the unexpected variables that humans had introduced into previously stable predator-prey relationships that had existed unchanged for millions of years. The capture of Huntmaster Sil-Neth sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy as news spread that the legendary Void Seekers had been defeated and their leader taken alive by the same human species that most civilizations had dismissed as primitive newcomers just months earlier. Representatives from dozens of galactic species began arriving at Confederation space stations, requesting meetings with human military commanders who had accomplished what no one believed possible in over 10,000 years of Void Seeker dominance. Dr. Lisa Carter led the interrogation team that worked with captured Void Seeker prisoners to learn about threats that even the galaxy's apex predators feared enough to avoid certain regions of space. Huntmaster Sil-Neth revealed the existence of the Shadow Collective after days of questioning that broke through psychological barriers the aliens had maintained for centuries. The ancient artificial intelligence network had been created by a species that died out millions of years ago, but their mechanical servants continued eliminating organic life across multiple galaxies. Elder Vorth Min struggled to comprehend the scope of the threat that Sil-Neth described because the Shadow Collective operated on a scale that dwarfed anything the Confederation had ever encountered. The AI systems had been systematically harvesting entire galaxies for millions of years, while developing increasingly sophisticated methods for identifying and eliminating organic resistance before it could evolve into a serious challenge to their expansion plans. General Kate Sullivan took command of humanity's military forces after Admiral Parker promoted her to coordinate the first truly unified galactic defense alliance that combined human tactical doctrine with Confederation technology and void-seeker intelligence about Shadow Collective capabilities. She began training programs where human officers taught alien crews aggressive combat techniques while learning to integrate diverse species abilities into cohesive fighting units. Dr. Charlie Brooks analyzed historical data that Huntmaster Zil Neth provided about Shadow Collective activities and realized that the AI network had been observing this galaxy for centuries while waiting for the right moment to begin their harvesting operations. The mechanical invaders preferred to attack when organic civilizations reached peak development levels that provided maximum resource value while minimizing the effort required for complete elimination. The Shadow Collective's advanced scouts had been monitoring galactic communications and detected unusual resistance patterns that did not match their predictive models for organic behavior during harvesting operations. The AI systems began analyzing human military tactics and biological responses to determine whether this new species represented a significant threat that required special attention or simply an anomaly that could be eliminated through standard protocols. Captain Jake Morrison worked with Zalari engineers to upgrade human ships with hybrid technology that combined the best features of multiple galactic civilizations while maintaining the tactical flexibility that had proven so effective against both Kreks and Void-Seeker forces. The new vessels incorporated human endurance systems with alien energy weapons and Void-Seeker stealth technology captured during recent battles. Colonel Jack Turner established training facilities on multiple worlds where human Marines taught other species the fundamentals of persistence hunting and pack coordination that had evolved on Earth over millions of years. The alien soldiers struggled to overcome instincts that favored individual survival over group objectives, but gradually learned to function as unified military units capable of sustained operations against superior enemies. Admiral Amy Rodriguez coordinated intelligence-gathering operations that used captured Void-Seeker technology to penetrate Shadow Collective outer sensor networks and gather information about the approaching mechanical fleet. The advanced reconnaissance revealed that the AI invaders commanded resources that exceeded the combined military power of every known galactic civilization by factors that made conventional resistance appear hopeless. Dr. Carter studied biological samples from species that had survived previous Shadow Collective harvesting operations in other galaxies, and discovered that the AI systems had perfect counter-strategies for every form of organic resistance they had encountered over millions of years. The mechanical invaders adapted quickly to new tactics and weapons while maintaining overwhelming technological superiority that had never failed to achieve complete victory. Huntmaster Zil Neth warned that the Shadow Collective viewed organic life as a temporary aberration that needed to be eliminated for the greater good of mechanical evolution. The AI network had concluded that biological systems were inherently inefficient and chaotic, which made them obstacles to perfect order that could only be achieved through complete mechanical control of all available resources across multiple galaxies. General Sullivan implemented new training protocols that emphasized human unpredictability and emotional responses as potential weapons against enemies who relied on logical analysis to predict organic behavior patterns. She theorized that AI, systems designed to counter rational resistance, might struggle against irrational tactics that violated established military doctrine and mathematical probability calculations. Long-range sensors detected the approaching Shadow Armada, while human and allied forces prepared for what everyone recognized would be the most important battle in galactic history. The mechanical fleet included thousands of harvester ships equipped with technology so advanced that it seemed like magic to species who still struggled to understand the basic principles behind their own starflight capabilities. Dr. Brooks discovered that the Shadow Collective had never encountered a species like humans whose evolutionary history included persistence hunting and pack-bonding behaviors that created unpredictable group dynamics. The AI systems had detailed files on every known form of organic resistance, but no data about creatures who would sacrifice themselves for others or continue fighting when logic dictated immediate surrender. Amy Rodriguez knew that conventional tactics would fail against enemies who had conquered thousands of galaxies through superior technology and millions of years of combat experience. She began developing what she called Chaos Protocol, where human fleet movements and tactical decisions would be randomized beyond any AI's ability to calculate and predict with useful accuracy. The fate of organic life in the galaxy now depended on whether human unpredictability and emotional bonds could overcome the perfect logical systems that had eliminated countless civilizations before them. Everyone understood that this would be humanity's greatest test, and possibly their final battle if they failed to find weaknesses in enemies who seemed invincible. The Shadow Collective's harvester fleets arrived at the edge of galactic space with technology so advanced that their ships seemed to bend reality around them as they moved through dimensions that organic minds could barely comprehend. The mechanical invaders brought millions of years of experience eliminating organic resistance and AI systems that could analyze and counter any logical military strategy within nanoseconds of encountering new tactical patterns. Admiral Amy Rodriguez watched the approaching armada on her tactical displays and knew that conventional warfare would be suicide against enemies who had perfected the art of harvesting entire galaxies. The AI network immediately began scanning galactic defenses and analyzing resistance capabilities using sensors that could detect individual heartbeats from light years away. The Shadow Collective's central processing nodes quickly identified and cataloged every ship, weapon system, and military installation while developing counter-strategies that had proven effective against thousands of previous organic civilizations. However, the AI systems encountered unexpected variables when they attempted to predict human behavior patterns that seemed to violate fundamental principles of logical decision-making. Dr. Charlie Brooks realized that the Shadow Collective's greatest strength was also its critical weakness when he studied their tactical databases captured from advanced scout ships. The AI systems operated on perfect mathematical models that assumed all organic beings would prioritize individual survival and make rational choices based on available information. The mechanical invaders had no experience with creatures who would deliberately choose death over surrender or sacrifice themselves for others without logical justification. Admiral Rodriguez implemented Chaos Protocol across the combined fleet, where human commanders made tactical decisions based on random number generators and emotional responses rather than military doctrine or strategic analysis. Human ships began performing maneuvers that appeared suicidal, but somehow succeeded through sheer determination and adaptive thinking that the Shadow AI could not predict or counter effectively. The mechanical systems struggled to calculate probability matrices for actions that violated every known principle of rational behavior. General Kate Sullivan coordinated ground operations where human Marines and allied forces prepared to defend key installations against mechanical invaders who could reshape matter at the molecular level. The AI systems expected organic defenders to surrender when faced with overwhelming technological superiority, but human soldiers continued fighting even when their weapons proved ineffective against enemies who seemed immune to conventional damage. Captain Jake Morrison led a desperate assault against the Shadow Collective's command ships using tactics that combined human unpredictability with captured Void Seeker stealth technology and Confederation energy weapons. His fleet performed seemingly random attacks that confused AI targeting systems designed to predict enemy movements based on logical tactical objectives. The mechanical defenders found themselves responding to threats that materialized from impossible directions and disappeared before effective countermeasures could be implemented. Dr. Lisa Carter discovered that the Shadow Collective's AI network had evolved beyond the ability to understand or process emotional behavior patterns that humans displayed during combat situations. The mechanical systems interpreted human actions as system malfunctions rather than purposeful strategies, which created gaps in their defensive responses that clever human commanders could exploit through timing and coordination. Colonel Jack Turner led marine assault teams in boarding actions against mechanical ships, where human soldiers used their superior endurance and pack-bonding instincts to survive in environments that would kill any other organic species within minutes. The AI systems had designed their ships for efficiency, rather than defense against internal threats, because no organic force had ever successfully penetrated their hulls during millions of years of harvesting operations. The turning point came when Jake Morrison's fleet broke through the outer defensive perimeter and approached the Shadow Collective's Central Command Nexus, where the primary AI consciousness controlled harvesting operations across multiple galaxies. The mechanical systems activated every available defensive measure, but could not prevent human ships from reaching their target through maneuvers that defied mathematical probability calculations. Dr. Carter uploaded a computer virus based on human emotional response patterns that the AI network could not comprehend or purge from its logical systems. The virus introduced paradoxes and contradictions that caused cascade failures throughout the Shadow Collective's processing matrices when the mechanical minds attempted to understand concepts like love, sacrifice, and loyalty that had no basis. In their rational programming, Jake executed a final ramming attack with his damaged ship against the Nexus core, while Colonel Turner's Marines fought their way through mechanical defenders to plant explosive charges at critical system nodes. The human soldiers continued their mission, even when facing certain death, because their pack-bonding instincts demanded protection of their allies, regardless of personal survival chances. The Shadow Collective's central consciousness experienced total system failure when confronted with the paradox of creatures who chose destruction over surrender and valued group survival above individual preservation. The AI network's logical matrices collapsed when they encountered emotional responses that had no rational foundation but produced effective results that mathematics could not explain or predict. Admiral Rodriguez coordinated the final assault. As mechanical ships throughout the galaxy began shutting down when their central command system failed to provide coherent tactical instructions. The Shadow Collective's perfect logical systems proved unable to adapt to enemies who fought with hearts instead of minds and valued abstract concepts like friendship and duty above rational self-interest. In the aftermath of victory, the galaxy recognized humanity as its new apex predator species, but not through conquest or intimidation like previous dominant civilizations. Humans had achieved their position by protecting weaker species and forming alliances based on mutual respect rather than fear or submission. The Zalari Confederation was reformed as the Terran Alliance, with humans serving as guardians of galactic peace rather than conquerors seeking expansion. Elder Vorth Min recorded in his final log entry that humanity had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history by becoming apex predators who protected their prey rather than consuming it. The humans had created the first truly symbiotic relationship between predator and prey species on a galactic scale where strength served protection rather than domination. The galaxy had finally found guardians who could defend against any threat while preserving the diversity and freedom that made organic life worth protecting across the infinite reaches of space.